Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr, co-hosted this episode by the lovely wife, Jennifer, who we discover in this episode is an introvert who's not very good at jumping. If an introvert jumps by herself in the woods and she barely leaves the ground, does she make a noise? That and so much more is answered in this episode. Thank you so much for being here. You should check out some of the stuff I've been doing on TikTok. I'm at the tongue guy on the Tickety Talk. And as always, you can find me also on Instagram at James E. Rohr. And Jennifer is at Jennifer Panza because she hasn't changed her last name. It's part of her introvert. What's up? Because of Instagram. Yeah. Where's Jennifer Rohr? Give us your handle. Okay. Enjoy the episode. Bam.
Well, pow.
We're live.
Hello, everyone.
Greetings.
Welcome to the podcast. I love my podcast. I'm just kidding, guys. It's still Jim's podcast, but I am really happy that I get to be the most popular guest on the show, I think now, for sure.
Yeah, we got to leave the house, meet some new people.
Totally. We know lots of people.
Well, we have been. We've been leaving the house. We've been going to Chicago this summer.
I feel like I've actually met a lot of people in the last couple months.
Yeah.
Like, actually a lot.
How does that feel?
Feels pretty awesome. I'm pumped.
Is your brain short-circuiting?
I think in my natural habitat as a only introverted only child that's wants friends because I can be an extrovert, I feel pretty happy about it.
Would you say you're mostly introverted by nature?
So I guess I always thought that I was extroverted until I actually learned the definition of introvert and extrovert.
What is it?
So an introvert, it's not about like how friendly you are or how outgoing you are, because I think a lot of people associate, outgoing people with extroverted people, but it's actually how you recharge. So extroverts get they feel more energized when they're out with people. Like they thrive in that environment. Like if they feel tired and they go out, like they'll come back with more energy.
These people exist?
Yeah, they do.
Wow.
And unless, correct me if I'm wrong out there, audience, maybe I have an incorrect definition, but introverts are recharge on their own, like in quiet. So you'll often find extroverts have a hard time making time for themselves in that quiet space because they thrive in that environment. They get a lot of energy from being around a lot of people. So they're like constantly out, constantly doing things. They're just like out and about.
I wonder if that's like sustainable. Like that would also be like something that could lead to adrenal fatigue, is someone who like convinces themselves that they're energized by being out all the time, but then they hit like a wall. Like I think about it in Chinese medicine, like with the tongue, red tip of the tongue indicates too much heat in the body, but oftentimes we'll see that with creative people. And I generally say extroverts who love to be out with people but they're craving constant stimulation. So if you think about it like a fire internally, being out is kind of like gathering firewood. But at some point, if their fire is burning so much, like they'll just burn through the wood, and then there's no amount that can refill it other than just flat out rest. Like I'm not sure that you can. I guess this tells me that I'm super introverted because I can't even really imagine somebody fully recharging to a healthy level without some like rest and alone time.
Well, I do think that extroverts can have rest and alone time. I think that it's just a normal human thing to have rest and alone time. It's just, I think, what your natural tendency is.
But then I also think too that like the way that we live in modern life, especially with the suburbs, is so messed up. And even just like even in apartments where you don't even know your neighbors, like
all the introverts live in the suburbs.
And it's like it's pretty horrible. Like, I mean, the suburbs are fine, but I mean the whole social structure. Like, I try to. Anytime there's been a question with raising Wyatt, I've asked myself, like, what was been done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution? Like, how do they used to live? You know, like I'm really passionate about co-sleeping. I think it's really important for babies to sleep in the room with the parents, at least for the first year. Like, it's just something I've really believed strongly in. And I believe strongly in it because that's how it's been done for a long, long time. Hunters and gatherers, you wouldn't put your baby in another cave. Like, you wouldn't put your baby in another teepee. That's not how it would have been. Everybody would be sleeping together. And in some of the cases, like with roundhouses and, larger, like even you can imagine a larger cave, everybody's going to be sleeping there together.
Sure. It's like in that cute Disney movie or the Pixar movie that we watched where the caveman family all sleeps on top of each other.
Yeah,
And then
that
they
movie
go to
was
the
funny.
what movie was that? And then they go to
I think
the,
was it called Cavemen or the Croods? Is it
oh,
the Croods?
it could have been
Justin
the Cruise.
Timberlake was the voice of the dude. Yeah,
It was
that
so
was funny.
cute.
Yeah.
That was such a funny movie. But yeah, like all of the cavemen are sleeping. They all pile on top of each other. They call it the pile.
Yeah.
And then they go to like the sophisticated, like future place that's like the other people who have built this like amazing palace and everyone has their own separate room. And like the dad is so depressed. He's like, I just want everyone to be together.
Yeah. That's like a legit thing. I remember Wyatt's grandfather. He told me, he said once one of the biggest mistakes he ever made in his life was moving to a huge house. They used to live in a 3-flat in the city where they lived in the second floor. I think the uncle lived on the third floor and the grandmother lived on the first floor. So they were all like there, it's kind of
Right.
a typical immigrant story. And then he did well successfully, financially. So they moved out to the suburbs. And he built this huge ass house. And he was like, never saw my family again. Like the girls just went off to their corners. Harriet was there, and then he had it like his basement man cave. And he's like, we get together at dinner time, but that's it. And he's like, I miss that where everybody's like near each other.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, like, were there introverts back then? If you think about like way back in the day, hunters and gatherers, like, would there have been such a thing as an introvert and extrovert? Was there someone who was just like, leave me alone, or like needing, like walking away to recharge? Or are these kind of constructs that come up because we have more free time to sit and overthink things? And so we create this idea of an introvert and extrovert.
Probably it's all made up. I mean, everything's made up.
It's made up.
But no, I think it's more, I do think that there are some basic human needs that all, introverted people, just because their natural tendency is to be more shy or they recharge at home and they don't feel a desire to go out and be social all the time, doesn't mean they're antisocial. It mean they're incredibly social and they can, can have experience loneliness and want deep connections. They just don't, they're doing that in a different way than like someone who's extroverted. Does that make sense? Like an extroverted person also needs alone time and that quiet space. It's just not their natural default.
Yeah, but like if you flip it around, because I've heard it said where introverts, they'll sort of recharge with one-on-one or one-on-two kind of interactions. So it's not even necessarily like totally alone time, but they can, interact with small groups. But then if an extrovert really needs like a larger audience, you could imagine also in hunter-gatherer times, like maybe they didn't have a large audience. Maybe it was a little pack of, 5 or 6 or 10 of them or something.
The extrovert went out and talked to the
and then,
hyenas late night.
Yeah, like what's the
Just like,
extrovert
hey,
doing?
what you doing?
Trying to just like,
Just like
it's the extroverts eating the mushrooms, just trying to like connect to something,
No way. The extroverts
something bigger.
The extroverts are walking over to the other clan just to see what they're up to and like what they had for dinner if it was different than what they had. They're the ones like bring the merchants that are like bringing all the like, different
seashells to,
different
to the
berries and
mountaintops.
different things. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna go like hike over here and see what these guys are up to, and like, maybe they want some of our stuff, and I'm gonna come back. See you in a couple hours.
It's interesting to me thinking about this stuff and how much language has a part to do with everything of like how we see the world. Like before they had the language of the introvert extrovert, how much was the experience there versus how much of it is incepted by having the language, and now with, really anything, all these disease names and stuff where it's like, oh, like, do I have, I don't even know, like attention deficit disorder with like, hardcore social anxiety and, all these other things. It's like, I just thought that was growing up. I thought that was just life in the 80s.
Right.
And so how much of it, like how much of things are incepted by the words that are used and the stories that we tell ourselves around those words, like even thinking about some of the, not to tread too deeply into, political waters, but even like some of the gender stuff that's happening, how much of that is or like organic, authentic feelings, and how much of it is incepted because, people are being told that they can be any gender that they want or choose a gender. And like, how, what's on it sort of happens from the story that's created from that, or is the language coming from, felt experience? Like maybe there are just so many people that are feeling, confused, or they're like, they don't want to be in this binary world. And so the language comes from that. It's sort of a chicken and an egg sort of situation. But I just think that something I've been thinking a lot about lately is just paying attention to the stories that I believe, because everything that we are and that we think, I believe, is tied to a story that we've told ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had lunch with a cousin who's Islamic, right? He's Muslim now. He converted, which is awesome. And I loved having lunch with him. I learned so much about his faith and what it's like to navigate that world. And I'm also struck by, like, so much of the paradigm shift for him is because he started believing a different story.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And it's like, oh, here's a tradition that has all of this, energy, momentum, beautiful, ceremonies and, prayer and, all of the things. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's just a different story. Same thing with Chinese medicine. It's like, oh, they've got this story of qi and meridians and, the tongue and all these sort of associations. And it's just a different story to believe in. And it's like, I mean, this isn't, if you've read any sort of self-help book, this is like a topic that comes up. But when I like really take the time to check in and ask myself, what are the stories that I'm believing about any particular issue that I might have? If if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling frustrated, if I'm feeling joyous, if I'm feeling confident, if I'm feeling insecure, it's what is the story that is behind all that? What is the belief? But a belief is really just a story anyway. It's like the belief comes about because we've told ourselves some story.
Right.
Like a kid who believes he's fast, he's like, he heard a story or, that he's fast, or maybe he beat one person in a race and is like, I'm fast. And they just start believing that story.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I do think with like religion and with Chinese medicine and things that, the putting it as like a quote unquote story, especially for people who haven't done that kind of self-development work of like understanding that everything is a story or like a narrative or, something, maybe some people would disagree with you on that of that everything's, technically a story, because if that's their faith, right? Like, I don't think necessarily like my cousin believes that it's a story. That's like, it's the truth. You know what I mean? Or like Chinese medicine is like, it's just medicine, right? It's just, this is like the truth of the human body. And that's different than like, it gets different. The terminology, I think, and the perception of people when they're in that, they're living in their beliefs or the quote unquote story, it's a different experience than somebody looking from the outside in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it. I don't totally, and it's like it's a good thing to talk about. Like, I don't mean it pejoratively,
right?
And also, like, the stories that we know about that religion, or the stories behind, like the way that truth is transmitted, is literally through story,
right? But I just wanted to make sure that
yeah, like I'm not saying it. I mean, again, I love Chinese medicine. Like, I love the stories that I believe that have me being victorious and amazing, and it's like, and the stories that I tell myself that are not so good for that. It's like, the beauty of that is it's an opportunity to just rewrite a different story. I get to choose a different story there if I want to, shit, where was I going to go with this?
Well, it's just tricky, at least, for me, sometimes when we're in our story or we have a certain belief about things, we don't even know that we're in it. And it's like, I think that's why it's so important to do ceremonies or, do this reflective work where you can get outside of yourself, because you may not even realize that you've made up this whole story. We're talking about the self-development story, not the Bible and the Chinese medicine thing. But, like with, let's just say, perfect example, my jumping. I'm not necessarily the best jumper. This is something that
She's talking about like literally jumping,
like literally jumping,
getting
like
the feet
jump
off the ground.
rope, jump in the air, like when someone's like, oh, let's take a photo, and like jump in the air and like take a photo. I probably won't be that high off the ground. It's like, I just am not a jumper. And that's a story, right? I say I'm not a jumper. And that story I've had for many years in my life. And it may or may not be true. Like if I thought when I was a kid, like, oh, I'm amazing at jumping, like maybe I would be like a TikTok jumping sensation or something. I have no idea. But because I learned that story at a young age, and I just don't really like jumping, to be honest, like I'm pretty okay with the ground. I'm a Taurus. Like I'm pretty like, I'm good with like slow balancing movements. It's like jumping is tricky for me. So, it's just like that. What if I told myself every day that I'm amazing at jumping? Like, I'm sure that I would get way better at jumping. But sometimes when we're in the story, it's funny because we don't realize that we've actually created that ourselves. Like, did I become a bad jumper because I just tell myself I'm a horrible jumper?
Right.
Or if I switch the story, would I become a good jumper or better jumper than I am now? And it's like when you're in it, like if I was just like, oh yeah, like, oh, I'm just bad at jumping. That's just an absolute statement. Like you don't even realize that in itself is the story. And that's what you can unravel this in everything in your life, everything in the way that it is. It's crazy.
Let's talk about COVID for a minute. I mean, that's the number one most recent impactful thing with a story. There was a story that said if you didn't get vaccinated, you were going to kill your grandmother. Yeah. If you weren't vaccinated, you were going to lead to a winter of, death and despair. Yeah. Right. This is like coming from the White House.
Right.
And it's like that narrative, that story that had questionable, it's like, I can't even call it data, that was very questionable, that now like the evidence is coming out very clearly that all like the narrative that they were spinning was predominantly bullshit. But the narrative that swept through that said, if you're not wearing a mask, you're like a family killer, that took hold. Right. And then it changed the way people interacted with each other. And it changed the way that people would look at each other on both sides. Mm-hmm. Like you'd be, oh, you're a sheeple, and like, oh, you're a Trumper, like whatever, climate change denier or whatever, like whatever. These are, this sense of division. Mm-hmm. And that's like the power of the story that can happen. Mm-hmm. And I believe that one of the most important skills that anybody can develop, especially for a parent to model for a child, is to question the story. Mm-hmm. What is the story that is behind your belief or your action? Like, what is it? Let's shine a light on that story. You can choose to believe it or not, and that's okay. But let's just admit what the story is.
Yeah. And sometimes it might be a story that has good roots and makes sense. Like, I love brushing my teeth in the morning. I think it's great. And you and Wyatt both don't brush your teeth first thing when you wake up in the morning. And I find it to be very confusing for me because I've been told a story that you should wake up and brush your teeth first thing in the morning. As soon as you get out of bed, brush your teeth. That's what you do.
Yeah, but why is that? Thing. Like, is there data behind that? Like, for me, it doesn't make sense because it's like, I'm going to get up and have some water and coffee. Like, why am I going to brush my teeth? And also, like, I don't really have horrible morning breath. Like, I'm not wearing a mouth guard. Like, you wake up and your mouth smells like a skunk. Like, I understand, like, if with the mouth guard stuff, like, you want to get that funk cleaned out right away. I don't wake up usually feeling like it with a very funky mouth. And so this might be totally grotesque, but like, is there data? I haven't actually looked for it. Like, is there data that says that like you should not be swallowing or like just drinking water, in the morning before brushing your teeth is like a terrible idea?
Well, we would have to consult a dentist, but the story that I've always thought and told myself is that brushing your teeth helps you wake up because the mint and it's like refreshing. It's like splashing cold water in your face. Yeah. But it's like your mouth. It's like, hi, good morning, like mint, fresh, like everything's fresh. It's new. It's a new day. Brushing your teeth first thing in the morning helps you like get in that wake up. Like it's part of just like, it's just what you do to wake up.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, it's like I hated brushing my teeth and having that horrible Crest toothpaste and then going like in my mouth and then going down and having cereal. Like the cereal tasted gross because I could still taste the like horrible toothpaste.
Yeah, because you eat right after you brush. You would eat.
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing you do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. See, we just have different morning routines of like what should be done in a morning.
I had a story. Yeah, stories are great.
Like no way, I wouldn't brush my teeth and then go eat. No, you got to brush your teeth. You got to take a shower. You got to get your clothes on. You do all the things, and then you eat breakfast last thing before you leave.
like as you're walking out to the
Yes,
bus.
as you're like in the car driving.
Yeah.
You're eating your bagel or walking.
I mean, I grew up with a story. My mom used to tell me that if you have a nightmare, the best thing you can do is get up and go pee, and then you're peeing out the nightmare. You're peeing out the bad dream. Because like that's a horrible thing when you have a bad dream and then you wake up and then you go back to sleep and you're back in the bad dream again.
Right.
And so I always had this belief that like that's what I did. Anytime I have a bad dream, I just get up and I go pee and I'd be like, oh, I'm peeing it out. And then I go back to sleep and I'd usually sleep really soundly.
It's amazing.
Until this one time.
Uh-oh.
I was in my early 20s. And
You were peeing in your dream?
I had
It was a peeing dream and you couldn't
I was there. Hold on. How did it go? I was there. I was like, my girlfriend was in bed with me and I woke up. I had a nightmare.
In the dream.
I had a nightmare. The nightmare was that my girlfriend was turned into some kind of demon. She had some crazy demon face.
Oh geez.
And then I woke up and I was like, holy shit. And I look over and she's normal face, right?
Yeah.
And so I get up and I go to the bathroom and I go to pee. And I finish peeing, and on the way out of the bathroom, I look in the mirror and the demon face pops out of the mirror.
Oh my God.
And then I wake up in real life.
Whoa.
So I had woken up in my dream, followed the story advice I'd done my whole life of going to the bathroom, but that was still part of the nightmare.
That's crazy.
I was terrified.
That's like Inception.
Yeah, I woke up again.
Within a dream.
Totally. This is before that movie came out, and I woke up and I was just I didn't want to look at her. I didn't want to look at the mirror. I did have to pee, and I was terrified.
Wow,
That was one of the times that I felt most scared in my life.
Because you didn't know if you were awake anymore at that point.
I was all sorts of confused.
And that's what's so crazy about dreams. You really don't. They're so real sometimes. You wonder, is that a real reality? And we're dreaming now. Everything's backwards, or the brain, the way it processes things, it feels real. Dreams, maybe they are real. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, the Aborigines in Australia, they refer to the waking time as the dream time.
Yeah. This is all the illusion is the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And the real world is when we sleep.
Something else.
Yeah. The Matrix. I'm into it.
Yeah. The Matrix, Neo, right? The whole story is him battling this story of him being the one.
Mm-hmm.
People are trying to thrust this story upon him. And
mm-hmm.
he's like, am I not? And it's coming to terms with the beliefs. What is the belief? What is the story?
Yeah. It's a great movie.
I think it's a really valuable exercise.
Yeah. I think it's great.
If you're dating and you're not getting the success that you want, what are the beliefs? What are the stories that you're telling yourself from that experience?
I mean, the story rabbit hole could just it's just insane.
It never ends.
It never ends. We're just talking about silly examples toothpaste and jumping, but literally it's every single purchase you've ever made, every interaction you've ever had, all comes down to a story of what you believe or what you've been told.
Well, this is why you're great, because we're talking stories. You're talking about toothpaste and jumping, and I'm talking about
Seeing demons.
genders and COVID.
Hey, I'm thinking you're
is that
young,
a brick
baby.
wall? I'm just gonna run right into it.
Well, we all know that you've been dying to talk about that, so it's nice. And it's a real. It's been coming up about the jumping because I started doing all these other workouts that I don't normally do. I'm pretty safe in yoga that I'm not gonna have to jump. Chances are, if you go to a yoga class, you're not gonna have to jump. But we've been going to all these boot camps and these different exercise classes to change it up, which I think is fun and I think it's great for our bodies. But, jumping has been a real thing for me lately.
Jumping is really, it adds a level of intensity to a workout, the fast twitch stuff. And we're going to these body weight exercises. And, you know,
It's a
if
lot
you
of
go to a
jumping.
body weight class, there's going to be jumping. Like there's
gonna
going to
jump.
be burping,
Jumping
jumping
jacks.
jacks.
Burpees.
So I learned, I don't know if it might
Like
be a
where you just
British
jump
thing.
across the mat.
Have you heard jumping jacks actually being called star jumps?
Star jumps.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that so
I
much
heard
better.
that phrase. I think it might be British. Well, the person I heard it from was British, but and I'd
Star
never
jump.
heard them. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do a star jump.
Okay,
and,
now I wanna
you know,
do
now
'em.
you're like a starfish. You jump
Okay.
up like a starfish.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna practice my
Like
star
what's a
jumps
jumping
tomorrow.
jack?
I don't know.
Some,
because the
some
thing.
dude like
No,
named
the
Jack
toy. The toy. The
Oh,
Jack
that
in
you-
the Box.
that you pull a string and he's like, "Ah."
No, the one that you wind up. It's like it's like doo, 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 and it's like a little music thing, and then it jumps out. Isn't that called a Jack in the Box?
Yeah.
And it jumps. It jumps out of the box.
That's where the jumping jacks came from, you think?
I have no idea, but I just made that up. That's the story I'm gonna tell. Yeah, don't you know jumping
I'm
jacks
sure
comes
someone
from
will tell us.
the little clown that jumps out of the box.
Yeah.
The hamburger place is named after that, at least. I don't
There
know
was
if
one
they're
of those
still
where
around.
we used to live in California. There was one just down the street from us. And people used to get so sick going there.
Well, that's the story. That's the story I have about Jack in the Box in my head too. I remember when I was a little kid, and it was like someone got sick. It was
Yeah,
like got
there
E.
was
coli
like a
or
salmonella.
something.
Yeah,
Or like
E. coli.
salmonella.
Yeah.
And it was like
yeah.
that was it. For
That
Jack
was the
in
thing.
Box.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that we both believe that story.
Yeah. I've
Probably their hamburgers were fine.
yeah. I
But
mean, you can get like that stuff.
You can
from
get salmonella
salad.
from anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when we went camping and you got so sick and it was like you were eating like vegetables and hummus.
Ugh, nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah.
It was
With
really
the story that like eating vegetarian is better.
bad. For salmonella.
And it was like you got so sick and I was like, I don't know.
No, you know what it was? I think it was that garlic.
The hummus.
Yeah, I think it went bad. The garlic and the hummus.
Yeah. Tough times.
Yeah, it was not good. Everybody use refrigerators. It's good. Nobody. It's like nobody
Check
knows
on your
that in this
vegetarian
century.
friends.
In this century, is like, oh yeah. Turns out.
Like the Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine has a story that says that ice and cold things is pretty bad for you, especially for injuries. Now, I think that's a really convenient story to have
When you have
when
no ice.
you have no ice. When ice is not available, wasn't available when you're like forging the foundational thoughts of this. Like if you don't have ice at the ready, you're not going to make the case why ice is so ice is so valuable. But what's cool is in Chinese medicine, there's like two main texts. There's the like foundational text. One is the treatment of cold diseases, and the other one is the treatment of warm diseases. And they developed from two totally different regions in China because what they found, I think it was the cold diseases came first. And that was from colder climates, and that the nature of disease and the progression of disease was different in
the hot
warmer
places.
climates, and so there were these two different treatises that developed.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And so yeah, they were like, don't use ice. And now I'm like, if they had ice, I'm fairly certain they would say put ice on an injury for the first like 12 hours at least.
Right.
Same thing with MRIs and X-rays and all this stuff. Like, I think the way China, at least when I went to China 20 years ago in the hospitals or 15 years ago, I think they'd do it right there where people would come in, they'd see the herbalist would like feel the pulse, look at the tongue, ask some questions, and then they would send them to get like an endoscopy. Like I was in the gastric ward, and they'd send them to get an endoscopy, and then they'd say, okay, we'll bring the results back here and let's take a look. Then they bring the results back,
Right.
usually within like a day, and then they would write them like an herbal formula.
Genius.
And it's great. And it's like, so I really that made a big impression on me. And I definitely would adopt that with my clients and be like, listen, like the ones that really trusted me and wanted
Right.
to do things as naturally as possible. I was like, yeah, go to your doctor, get all
Right.
the
all
labs,
the tests,
get all the
blood
labs,
work.
let them scan you and look inside of you and all that stuff. The Western medicine's ability to see inside the body is amazing.
Yeah, totally.
The problem is that their treatments usually suck.
Right.
And like the whole pharma, FDA, like all that stuff is like totally corrupt. And so, but like let them look inside you. And then not only are the treatments usually like a lot of times questionable, oftentimes they don't really understand even what they're seeing. You know, when you look at
Right.
cholesterol and stuff, they haven't understood cholesterol right in a long time. And now with like sugars and inflammation and all these things, it's like, so just because you get a number doesn't mean that even if it's out of the range that that's necessarily the case. But go ahead, get all of the exams. And then when it comes to treatment, let's talk about what some of the options are. And then what's great is you can go back and get retested. You know, and if the test
See if
didn't
it's
have,
working.
if the margin of error is reasonable, like you can oftentimes see things improve, quote unquote, improve. from a natural treatment. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So if the if the Chinese had access to MRI machines 3,000 years ago, maybe they wouldn't have been so dependent on tongue diagnosis. They'd probably be like, let's use the MRI and see what's going on.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. I'm actually really excited. I've been seeing some of our colleagues in the world of doTERRA. doTERRA is coming out with an awesome metabolic line in a few weeks. I don't know if we've talked about that on this podcast, but a lot of people have been wearing the blood sugar monitors and the glucose monitors because they want to see the before and after and the results of what this monitoring does to their blood. And I'm so excited to see the real clinical results.
Yeah. So I'm actually teaching a class on this on Tuesday. If those of you that listen to the podcast when it comes out on Monday, I'm doing one on Tuesday. You can find the links on my Instagram or whatever.
Or if you want the recording, just reach out to us.
Yeah. And looking at the difference between like your physical, what do they call it? Your biological age versus your metabolic age. And your metabolic age is like how healthy your cells are and what your age is kind of internally. And one of the things that ages us really quickly are sugar spikes.
Yeah.
And so being able to regulate the blood sugar is huge. Cinnamon is actually one of the tremendous, there's been a lot of research on cinnamon and regulating some of the blood sugars, but then we're also seeing things like grapefruit is another one that's really, really helpful. And so doTERRA is coming out with this amazing line. We're going to have a lot more information on this in a few weeks, but they're coming out with this amazing line that's going to help to have your biological age, like to be able to increase your lifespan and not just to keep you alive, but to make sure that your quality of life, it matches that lifespan. Because we've gotten to this time now where we're really good at like keeping people alive, but quality of life tends to suck. And so doTERRA is investing a ton in order to shrink that gap, to have quality of life match lifespan.
I love it.
Which is like a totally amazing and noble goal. And so part of the way through that is to like being able to regulate the blood sugar, to not have those huge spikes. Same thing with stress management.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like the people that are using this new product, like they're losing weight, they look healthier than they ever have. Like they have more energy. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're like shedding inflammation is like kind of how I see it. You know, it's not like a weight loss product, but weight loss is oftentimes a byproduct of getting healthier.
Right.
You know, as your body, it like doesn't need to create so much inflammation and hold on to all of that fat because it thinks that it's in crisis, and that it can actually start to lean out, then we see weight loss tends to happen. And then on an emotional level, you know, a lot of times the weight gain is because we're trying to protect ourselves. And I think that part of healing and getting into just a better, more calmer state on a cellular level means that we don't need as much protection. We're not living in quite that amount of fear. And so then, you know, the weight can fall off and people just look more vital. They look more present.
I'm so excited.
But we're going out to doTERRA's convention in a couple weeks, and we're going to learn even more about it. So it should be awesome.
Yeah. And if you guys want to learn if this is an interesting topic, you can also tune in from your own house.
Yeah, they've got they're streaming the convention, so you can watch it from home. I think it's only like $35 or something.
Yeah, it's like amazing.
Yeah, and so you'll get to you can watch the whole thing, or they're even creating, I believe, a like a synopsis, sort of like the entire convention in an hour or something, which will be cool. And check that out.
Super exciting.
Maybe you can see us in the crowd.
Yeah, we're going to be jumping up and down with our blood glucose monitors being like, we're going to live forever.
You're gonna, if it turns you into jumper, then we know.
Oh my gosh.
The undiscovered aspect of the new product line.
I'm just going to tell myself
Jen
that
can
story.
jump.
I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, I started taking this new product and now I can jump.
You're a powerful jumper.
I'm like going to be an Olympic jumper next.
Yeah. Where
Probably
it gets
not.
weird with some of this stuff is when the story you tell yourself doesn't always match up with what's happening on the ground. Then that's the rub, right? That's the thing. Like when Wyatt was getting beat up in playtime from his friend, and Wyatt's story that he tells himself is that he did awesome.
Well, he wasn't
He's
getting
just
beat up. He was just
no. Well, they were play fighting, and he was losing.
right.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. It wasn't like bullying. They were play fighting.
No. They were like fighting each other.
Yeah.
But that kid has martial arts experience.
Yeah, kid's dad is like a trained,
Ninja.
ninja. And so I was just like, I did awesome. And it's like, it's great. I know we told the story, but
Oh yeah.
it's like,
I wasn't sure if we told that story
yeah,
on the
yeah, we
podcast.
did. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's great. And also, in order to keep that story being real, you might have to practice.
Yeah.
You might have to train.
All right. I'm going to start jumping tomorrow.
You've already been jumping. You're already on the.
I have been jumping a lot.
Yeah, I know.
I'm committed to having more vertical lift.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I believe in me too.
Great. And on that note, we believe in all of you.
And we love you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. And we love you no matter what stories you tell yourself. But hopefully you tell yourself a good story. Tell yourself a story that like fills you with hope and excitement and joy.
And if you don't like the story, you can always change it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't even know if you're in a story, reach out to us. We'll help you see the story. We're very good at that.
Yeah, that's part of what we do here. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.
See ya.